Lovely. Good evening, everyone, and thanks, Liz, for the introduction. My name is Tom Pease. I'm the head of international and money advice. Imagine some of you have had some discussions with my team, the international advice team in particular, around your visas, whether that's to study here or your options after you've graduated. What we'll be going through today is a sort of overview of the most popular immigration routes for students in the UK to move on to after they've finished their studies. So we'll be looking at the graduate visa, we'll be looking at the skilled worker visa, we'll be looking at the innovator founder visa, the global talent visa. We'll touch a little bit on routes to settlement, and then, as Liz has mentioned, we'll open up for questions right at the end. So as Liz has said, feel free to pop any questions in the chat we can come back to. I'm hoping that through those sorts of parts of the presentations, I'll cover most of the questions. So it might be worth waiting until the end of a section before you pop a question in there. But then, yeah, we'll definitely come back to anything you've put in the chat at the end. And if you want to unmute and ask questions at the end, that's great as well. So I think it'll probably take us about 20 to 25 minutes to go through those bits. So we'll have lots of time as well for questions at the end. We do like to start off with is a quick disclaimer. Obviously, put in lots of effort to make sure all of the information in these slides is correct. But this is guidance. It's not immigration advice. Immigration advice will always look at you, the individual, and your circumstances. So if you are thinking of applying for one of these visas, always worth approaching either the international advice team or a qualified immigration advisor to discuss those circumstances before you make an application. And then the second disclaimer, as we were chatting about just before we started, was the rules are changing and they change all the time. You may well be aware that there was a recent update to the immigration rules about 10 days ago, which impacts several of the visa types that we're going to be discussing today. So again, if this is information, some of you may be in a position in the next few days to start thinking about applying for these visas. If you're one of our postgraduate students who got your results today, congratulations. Some of you may be just starting your journey with Royal Holloway or somewhere in between. But again, worth just considering that immigration rules do change. So what we're telling you today is accurate as of today. We can't guarantee that it will be accurate at the point that you actually come and make your visa application. So again, come and check with us. We'll update you. We'll update the pages that we're going to refer you to here as well. So we will start with the graduate visa, which is one of the most popular, the most popular visa for Royal Holloway students who have completed their course to move on to. You might also have heard of it referred to as the post-study work visa or just the PSW visa. These are all the same things. It's the graduate visa within the immigration rules. And the main thing to note about the graduate visa is that it's what we call an unsponsored route, which means you don't need to have found a job or an employer to sponsor you before you apply for it, which is one of the reasons why it's so popular. In terms of what you can do on this visa, you'll be issued a 2-year visa, and you'll see the little star there. That's because one of those rule changes that we mentioned that happened very recently has impacted that. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a minute. So at the moment, you'll be issued a 2-year visa. That will be changing down to 18 months from anyone who applies from the 1st of January 2027. Or if you're doing a PGR, a PhD, you'll be issued a 3-year visa, and there's no change to that in the most recent rules. And it will allow you to do pretty much any work in the UK, which is, again, why it's a really popular visa. The only limitations really are that you can't become a professional athlete, a sportsman, and you can't work as a doctor or a dentist. Anything else in any other business is absolutely fine. And indeed, if you want to, you can become self-employed or start your own business in the UK on that graduate visa. What we will talk about is the innovator founder visa as well. And if you are thinking about starting your own business, that probably is a better route for you. But, for your information, the graduate visa does allow that as well. What you can't do on it is you can't study if you were otherwise studying a course that would need a student visa. So if you're thinking about, maybe continuing your studies in the UK after you finished your current course, so moving from an undergraduate to a master's or master's to PhD, or whatever the change is going to be, this isn't the visa for you. You will need to do that on a new student visa. So just going back to that point that we mentioned, that the rules have recently changed. To sort of highlight exactly who is going to be getting 18-month graduate visas and who will be getting 2-year visas, to say that the rules will change from the 1st of January 2027. So if you were to make your application after that point, and you were granted the visa as a student finishing an undergraduate or postgraduate or master's degree, you would only get 18 months. Before that, you will still get the full 2 years. The cohorts that are going to get the 2 years then will be, if you're an undergraduate doing your final year at the moment, you will be completing your studies in the summer of 2026. So you will be applying before the 1st of January 2027, you'll be getting the full 2 years. So we mentioned we may have some people on the call who have completed their postgraduate studies today. Congratulations. You will certainly be applying before the 1st of January. Your visa will be granted for 2 years. And if you started with us in September last month on a 1-year postgraduate master's degree, you'll be successfully completing your course in 12 months' time. And therefore, again, you'll be able to apply before that deadline. For any other students, obviously, if you are completing your course into 2027 or beyond, then it's likely that you'll be getting that 18-month visa if you're completing an undergraduate or postgraduate or master's degree. In terms of the eligibility, it's quite straightforward, actually, the graduate visa. You need to have successfully completed your course in order to apply for it. You need to have a valid student visa at the point that you apply for it, and you need to be here in the UK when you apply for the graduate visa. And we will look in a little bit more detail at each of those and exactly what they mean. So in terms of your successful completion, you can scan the QR code there for the dates when you will complete. But predominantly, as we've mentioned, undergraduates, you tend to complete on the July of your final year. That's when your results come out. If you started the master's course with us in September, your results usually come out at the end of October, sometimes beginning of November, depending on the year. If you're a master's student who started in January, your results come out in February the next year. And obviously, if you're doing a PhD, it tends to be a little bit more fluid, so your results and your award are ongoing. Obviously, all of those dates assume that you are progressing normally and don't need to use any resits or summary assessment periods. In terms of how the UKVI, so that's the UK government body that actually grants you the visa, knows that you've completed your course, that's the university's responsibility. So the university has to tell the UKVI whether any of our students on a student visa have completed their course. And we will do that within 5 days of you receiving your final results. So if you are receiving your results today as a master's student, you can expect to get that email by Thursday next week, if not before then. You must wait until you get that email to confirm that we've made the report before you make your graduate visa application. That is the only way that the UKVI will recognise that you have completed your course. To put that into a sort of timeline and your window of opportunity for the graduate visa, we put together the following, which might appeal to certain learners as well, visual learners. So let's take our cohort of master's students. You can see you've been awarded today, but you're still in that too early period. Obviously, if we're talking about any other cohort of students, you're still studying your course. You're in the very much too early period to apply for the graduate visa at the moment. You'll then have that 5-day period where the university is making the report to the UKVI, and that is what starts your window of opportunity to apply for the graduate visa. So as soon as you get that email, that's your indication to go and make your application, provided, of course, that you are here in the UK. And you then have up until your student visa expires to submit your application. And the vast majority of students at Royal Holloway will have 4 months after their course completed before their student visa expires. So by the time your results have come out and by the time the university's done that reporting, it usually leaves you with 8 to 10 weeks to actually make your visa application for the graduate visa here in the UK. Once your student visa is expired, then it becomes too late. So do make sure you check your student visa expiry date as well. Say the vast majority of you will have 4 months on the end of it. If you don't, or if you're concerned you've perhaps even been given the wrong visa expiry date, that's when you need to come and have a chat with us. Again, the good news is it's a fairly basic application. You can apply online. Most students should then be able to use the UKVI ID Check app, which you just download on your smartphone. That will mean you don't have to go and do your biometrics at an appointment centre like many of you will have done when you first got your student visa. You just do everything online on the app. You fill out a fairly basic, although fairly boring, standard UKVI visa application, and that's it. You'll need your passport so that you can use the UKVI D-Check app, but there are no other supporting documents. So it's not like applying for the student visa where you'll have had to have gathered all of, supporting documents to prove, finances and English language and all of these things. Much, much easier for the graduate visa. You submit the application form and you're done. The UKVI always says it could take up to 8 weeks for them to process a graduate visa application. We would anticipate that you will get a decision much, much faster than that. Most of our students are looking at more like 8 days rather than 8 weeks, but always just worth bearing in mind that it could take up to that amount of time, the 8 weeks. We do have a lot more information about specific circumstances. So if you have family members, that are dependents on your student visa, what happens with them? Any changes that you might have made to your course, how that might impact it. If you have not, if you've not completed, if you've not progressed as planned, how that might impact your graduate visa eligibility, and then questions around travelling after your studies and then returning to apply for your graduate visa. These are all covered within the web page there. So I would encourage you to have a look at them if those are going to be relevant to you. The main thing then to say about the graduate visa as well is that it's a one-time offer. You will only ever get one graduate visa. Even if you then later go back into study on the student visa, you cannot go back onto the graduate visa again. You're only eligible to get it once, and you cannot extend it either. So when you've got that 2 years, 3 years, or soon to be 18 months, 3 years, you use that and then it's gone, I'm afraid. So if you are looking to stay in the UK for longer, you'll need to look at alternative immigration routes, alternative visa options as well. Or if you're in a position to do so, potentially move straight on to one of the visa routes we're going to talk about in the rest of the presentation. So one of those routes, whether it's going directly onto it or transitioning from the graduate visa onto it, again, very popular for students to stay and work in the UK, is the skilled worker visa. You might have known of it previously as the Tier 2 visa. They're, again, the same thing. The difference, or one of the big differences between the graduate visa and the skilled worker visa, is that this is a sponsored route. And by sponsor, we mean an employer. So you need to find an employer who is able to sponsor you in much the same way that the university at the moment sponsors you for your student visa. And that employer will need to be able to offer you a job that meets certain requirements. We'll go through those in a bit more detail in a minute. Like the student visa as well, the skilled worker visa is what we call part of the points-based system. So you need to do certain things to get a certain number of points. And the number of points you need to be granted a skilled worker visa is 70 points. Quite similar as well to your student visa. You will know that when you were applying for your student visa, the university needed to issue you a CAS. It's a COS instead for a skilled worker visa. So your employer would issue you a COS, a certificate of sponsorship, and that will be something you definitely need before you can apply for this. And obviously, much in the same way that your CAS gave all of that key information about, Royal Holloway and the course you're studying, etc., your COS also contains all of that key information for you to make your application. So that COS is absolutely one of the mandatory points that you need to get, and you will get 20 points for having a COS from an approved sponsor. There are currently 32,000 organisations, or over 32,000 organisations in the UK who can offer you sponsorship on the skilled worker route. We won't go through all of them, but if you do want to have a look, the government publishes a list of them there. Of course, you probably don't want to have to look through 32,000 employers and try and work out, whether they are offering jobs and whether they are actually sponsoring students, even if they've got the license or not. But the good news in that regard is that our colleagues in the Careers Service who are on the call have provided, in conjunction with Student Circus and eCareers Grad, lots of resources to help you find employers who are going to offer sponsorship. So to help you really pinpoint which jobs and which employers to go for as a student who's going to need sponsorship to remain in the UK. So I would really encourage you to have a look at Student Circus there and eCareers Grad, because they've got excellent resources to help you in your job search, and of course to visit our colleagues in the Careers Service as well. So you've got your 20 points for finding an employer who's issued you a COS. You need another 20 points then for finding a job at a suitable skill level. And again, there's a nice long list of those types of jobs. And the UK government currently has 250 broad job types. We'll look at a couple of examples of those in a minute. And then over 1,100 specifically named roles which qualify for sponsorship under the skilled worker visa. And they are incredibly varied. The examples I've put on there is you could become a fish and chip shop owner if you want to, or you could become a chief executive officer. I'll let you decide which one you'd like to do. So you're now up to 40 points. The final mandatory 10 points is for being able to speak English. And the great news is, because you are going to be completing a course at Royal Holloway, which was taught in English, you already meet that requirement. So very easy for you to get that final 10 points. That takes you up to the mandatory 50 points that everybody has to get. As we mentioned, the requirement is to have 70 points. And those remaining 20 points are what are called tradable points. But the most common way of getting them is to find a job that pays you a relevant salary. And that relevant salary is determined by the job. So the CEO will need to earn a little bit more than a fish and chip shop owner. And so those different jobs have what's called a going rate. Equally, what's important is whether you qualify as what's called a new entrant. So new entrant in this sense is a new entrant to the job market. And so the UK government, the UKVI, recognises, of course, that you as a recent graduate, just in the same way that home students are likely to be going into positions which wouldn't pay as much money as somebody who had 4, 5, 10, 20 years of experience plus their qualifications. And therefore, the wages that you're going to be earning will be slightly lower as a new entrant. You are a new entrant then, and able to take advantage of being able to find a job at a slightly lower wage if any of the following apply, and they will all apply to everybody on this call to some extent. So if you are aged under 26 on the day that you apply for your skilled worker visa, you are a new entrant. If you are applying in the UK while holding a student visa or graduate visa, you are a new entrant. If you didn't decide that you wanted to apply right away, but instead went home and decided then that you wanted to come back to the UK on a skilled worker visa, you're still a new entrant if you're doing so within 2 years of your student visa or your graduate visa expiring. If you're doing a PhD, then you need to have completed at least 24 months of that PhD programme. So any of those criteria that you meet, you will be considered a new entrant. As I say, the advantage of applying as a new entrant is that going rate. is decreased. So rather than having to have the going rate, you need to earn 70% of the going rate, or £33,400, whichever is the higher amount. We've put a couple of examples on there. So I put the link in the QR code onto the previous slide. So you can look through all of those 250 job types and 1,100 actual positions and check what the going rate is. But a couple of examples that we've put on there, you've got chartered and certified accountants, and then all of the various jobs that fall under that banner. And you can see the 100% going rate there is £49,200. But as a new entrant, you would qualify for the lower rate, which is £34,500. So that is what you would need to be earning per year to get a sponsored job as an auditor, as a financial accountant, as a fund accountant, etc., etc. The one under it then, as you can see, the going rate for finance and investment analysts and advisors is slightly less than chartered and certified accountants. The 100% rate is £45,800, and the 70% rate on that one is that £33,400 amount. So that is the lowest amount that you can possibly earn. But to say, it does depend on the type of job that you're going for. So some jobs, it will be higher than that amount. Some jobs, that will be the minimum amount that you need to look at. So have a look at the type of jobs again that you're going to be aiming for, and what the salary requirements are for you to be sponsored on that. Important as well to understand how long you can actually be considered a new entrant for. And the answer to that is 4 years of your total immigration permission under either the skilled worker visa or the graduate visa. So you can only benefit from that new entrant requirement in terms of your salary for those 4 years. After that 4 years, then you go back up to the 100% rate, or a minimum of £41,700. So the expectation is that after that sort of period of time, after that 4 years, you should be able to increase your earnings up to that 100% going rate in whichever chosen job you are pursuing. Also worth noting that the UK has an ever-changing skills shortage positions where there are some lower salary requirements. These will include positions in the NHS, teaching roles, lab and pharmaceutical technicians, care workers and home carers, artists and musicians, and potentially others, quite sort of niche roles that might come up where the UK is looking specifically overseas to recruit people with the skills to fill that. Again, you can have a look in the immigration rules themselves. This is a list that is updated again on a fairly regular basis, albeit that I would expect those 4 examples there to be ones that are quite recurring. As with most countries, we're really keen on doctors, nurses, teachers, etc., etc. So they will almost always be on there. But there are quite a lot of niche roles that come in and out of that as well that might be worth keeping an eye on over the months and years. In terms of switching on to the skilled worker visa, you might be aware that about 2 years ago, the rules changed around that to make it harder for students to switch whilst they're studying. So again, this is going to be a visa route that for most of you, you will need to wait until either after you've completed your studies or shortly before. So if you are doing a taught course, if you're an undergraduate or master's degree student, you will need to apply for the skilled worker visa after the course end date on your CAS, or you can apply earlier, 3 months before the course end date on your CAS, providing that the start date on your COS, so that's going to be the start date of your employment, is after the course end date on your CAS. So in other words, you can't start a skilled worker position whilst you're still studying. You have to wait until you're finished. It's slightly more relaxed for PGRs, PhDs, in the sense that you need to have completed 24 months of your course after that course start date listed on your CAS. Again, other information there and links out as well to some of the resources that we've spoken about on our pages there. Quick sip of water. The third type of visa, I did mention it earlier, is the Innovator Founder Visa. It's a relatively new / old visa in the sense that it's been around, but the UKVI just like to change the names of the visas just to keep us all confused. So if you've heard previously of something called the Startup Visa, or prior to that, it was called the Graduate Entrepreneur Visa. Again, it's all the same thing, just slightly different packaging. This is the route that I would advise you look at if you are considering starting your own business. So if you are an entrepreneur and you'd like to open a business in the UK, this is probably the better route for you. You mentioned that it can be done on the graduate visa, but there are limitations with the graduate visa, mainly that it comes to an end and doesn't really lead you anywhere with your business. So if you're really focused on starting a business in the UK and making a go of it beyond the 18 months to 3 years that you get on the graduate visa, then I would suggest the Innovator Founder Visa. In terms of the types of business that you might be creating, well, there's no limit to what it could be. The requirement is that it be a new idea, so you can't use or join an existing business. And again, that's really important to think about with the graduate visa. You can start a business on the graduate visa, but you can't then bring it over to the Innovator Founder Visa because, by definition, it's then not a new idea. It needs to be innovative, so it needs to be different from anything else on the market, and it needs to be viable, so you'll need to prove that there is a potential for growth. You don't actually have to make a cash investment into the business. There's no requirements in that sort of sense. But to say that last part there, that is viable for potential growth, you will need to create a business plan. You will need to be able to show that it is something that can make money and create jobs in the medium to long term. In terms of who actually decides whether your business plan meets that, the UKVI have appointed 3 official endorsing bodies to judge the potential of your business. I always think it must be a bit like, the TV show Dragon's Den, where, you go and pitch your ideas to them or something like that. But that's essentially how it works. So you need to approach one of those 3 official endorsing bodies, meet with them, show them your business plan. They will judge it along those 3 criteria. And if they're happy that your business plan meets that criteria, then they will issue you an endorsement. You must have that endorsement before you then go on to apply for the Innovator Founder Visa. The Innovator Founder Visa is a 3-year visa. Obviously, the main aim of that visa is for you to establish your business in the UK. And that should be your primary focus, but you can also work whilst you're doing that as well. So there's no actual limitation on you being able to work in the UK. What you will have to do is continue to meet with your endorsing body during that 3-year period to show that you're then meeting the aims of your business plan and actually your business is progressing. After the 3 years, the good news is the Innovator Founder is what we call a fast-tracked settlement or indefinite leave to remain, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail later. So there is the possibility that after 3 years, you can remain permanently in the UK, or if required, or if you'd like to, you can apply to then extend the Innovator Founder Visa. Again, a bit more information on our pages there, including the links to the 3 endorsing bodies themselves, so that if you want to start discussions with them, they are definitely the people to speak to about getting that endorsement, which is essential for you to go onto that visa. Another one becoming increasingly popular with students, and we get lots of questions about, is the Global Talent Visa. There is a high bar to be issued this visa. So it is either for internationally recognised leaders, or, and this is more likely to be relevant to yourselves as students, people who can demonstrate that they are future world leaders, that are likely to become world leaders. There are sections within arts and cultures, humanities and social sciences, natural sciences and medical research, engineering, or digital technology. So if you're going to become a world leader within one of those disciplines, then this is certainly a visa to have a look at. Again, there are approved endorsing bodies who will decide if you meet those criteria. So, for example, if you were going to go down the arts and culture route, then it's Arts Council England who would judge whether your application and whether your achievements to date warrant you being considered an internationally an international leader or a future leader. So again, bar is quite high with those, but very much worth having a look at. And one of the reasons you can do that is it does offer you a great deal of flexibility. So you can choose to stay in the UK for between 1 and 5 years on the global talent visa. There's pretty much no restrictions on you. You can work, you can study, you can open a business. So yeah, fantastic visa if you can get onto it. Moving on then, let's say briefly to look at settlement or indefinite leave to remain. So this is, I guess, if we're thinking longer term for you, if your plan is to remain in the UK indefinitely. And again, these are ones that we know are changing or will change in the very near future. So we've put 5 years in the UK on the skilled worker route. You may be aware that there's a policy position at the moment to change that to 10 years, which we expect to happen relatively soon. Equally, there are other routes that you can go down. So you've got the partner and family route. So 5 years if you are a partner, so wife, husband, or otherwise, or a family member of a person already settled in the UK. There is then the long residency route, which means if you've been in the UK for 10 years on any combination of visas legally, then you are also eligible to move on to settled status or indefinite leave to remain. And as we mentioned, there are a couple of fast track opportunities, particularly around some of those visas that we've just talked about. So the Innovator Founder visa, if your business meets certain thresholds in terms of its earnings and the number of people that it's employing, then after 3 years, you can be eligible to have fast track towards settlement. And then similarly on the Global Talent visa, if you're here on for 3 years on the Global Talent visa and you wish to, you can move on to indefinite leave to remain settlement. So again, those two really good visas to look at if you do have long-term ambition to stay in the UK. Great. In terms of any sort of further questions you have, again, we'll open up for questions right now. But otherwise, you're very welcome to email us on the address there. You're very welcome to drop in and see us in Founders East, room 132. We just run an open door, so you're welcome Monday to Friday, 10 AM to 4 PM to pop in and ask any follow-up questions. Equally, if you prefer to sort of chat to us over video, you can book an appointment at a time that is convenient to you. So I think we have got about 25 minutes left, and I will unshare my screen now, see if we've got any questions in. It looks like we might do. Oh, that's just Liz. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, please do pop them into the chat. Otherwise, if you wanted to unmute your microphone and ask them, then again, very happy to take them now.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hi, Alexandra. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, sorry. So I just wanted to ask about I was on a visa for 4 years because I had the 3-year degree plus a placement year, and then I decided to drop out of the placement year last year, and now I'm not sure how can I amend that.
Great. It's a really good question, and it might be applicable to several students here. So this is often, the case if you've come on a visa which also included a year in business or a placement or study abroad or any of those sorts of things, and then you've decided not to undertake them, it means that you will have a visa that is essentially 1 year too long. That's okay. The good news is, from your point of view as a student, there is nothing that you need to do. It's all on the university to report those changes in your circumstances back to the UK government. And it will do that twice. So it will have done it already if you've already dropped that programme. We'll have told them there's been a change. That first report doesn't change anything. It's just for your information, UK government. Alexandra has decided she doesn't want to go on a year on business. The second report that we'll make, just looking at your name and year on there, it would suggest that you've just started your final year. The second report that the university will make will be In July 2026, when you'll be getting your final results and assuming that you've successfully completed your course, we then tell the UKVI that you have completed your course earlier than initially expected. And all that does is trigger them to shorten your visa to 4 months from the point that we told them. So if we're telling them in July 2026, then your visa will be ending some point around about now in 12 months' time. So probably end of October, beginning of November 2026. And that would be the same for anybody who's making that kind of change. So going from a course which originally felt that was going to be longer, and therefore the UKVI issued you a visa to cover that, to something shorter. It won't impact your eligibility for the graduate visa. You are still welcome to apply using exactly the same principles that we spoke about in the presentation. The one thing to be really careful about, if that is you and you are completing your course earlier than you first anticipated, so earlier than when you were first issued the visa, is you should not leave the UK after you get your results. If you do so, your visa will then be cancelled and you won't be able to come back into the UK. So that's particularly important, obviously, if you're looking to apply for the graduate visa, because you have to be in the UK to apply for it, and you have to have a student visa. So that's one thing to just be careful of, but otherwise, it's not going to impact your eligibility for any of the visas that we've spoken about.
I'm so sorry. So just because you were saying I can't leave until I apply for the graduate visa, is that what you said?
Yeah, so you can't, you have to be in the UK to apply for the graduate visa. If you leave after your final results are released, then you will invalidate your visa because you are finishing earlier than you were otherwise expected to do so. So it's only in that circumstance that you need to be careful about leaving. So if your plan is to go onto the graduate visa, stay in the UK, wait for us to email you in July to say that we have reported your successful completion to the UKVI, immediately apply for the graduate visa. It should take a week to 2 weeks for you to get that. As soon as you've got your graduate visa, you can leave the UK without facing any issues.
Thank you so much.
Okay, no problems. I'm going to have a quick look in the chat, and I'll just read the questions out as well. So Eamon says, I'm supposed to graduate by June 2026. However, my visa will expire in October 2027. So if I apply for jobs, do I need to apply for a new visa or can I work using my current visa? I skipped my placement year. So this is exactly the same question actually as Alexandra's. So your visa will only expire in October 2027 if you don't complete this summer, Eamon. So when you're going to talk to employers, you can mention that as well. I've got another question. Can the graduate visa be applied for sometime after course completion, such as 2 to 3 years later? So the answer to that one was no, and I will quickly go back and share the slide on that one, just to recap on the window of opportunity that we mentioned. All the way back. So, as I said, the basic eligibility is that you have to have successfully completed your course, but you also have to have a valid student visa. And of course, your student visa is not going to extend 2 to 3 years into the future after your course completion. As we said, almost all students at Royal Holloway will have 4 months after their course is completed valid on their student visa. And so the window for you to apply is from when you have completed your degree, been successfully awarded, and then when we report to the UKVI and you receive that email to say that we have reported, up until when your visa expires, which is going to be 4 months after your course completion. So certainly not 2 to 3 years in the future, I'm afraid. So next question. Hello, will the new changes affect students who came in 2024 before the news of the skilled worker visa getting changed to 10 years? Yeah, we expect that they will. As you might be aware, earlier this spring, the UK government announced what was called an immigration white paper, That immigration white paper was a policy position and a sort of ideas of what they'd like to do in the future, rather than a change to the immigration rules. And so what we're going to see, and what we're already seeing, based on some of those changes, for example, the white paper said we wanted to change from 2-year visas for graduate visas down to 18 months. That then came into an actual immigration rule in October, 2 weeks ago. So it's difficult for us to tell you exactly what's going to change in some of these ideas, and exactly when they're going to change, because the white paper was, these are our ideas, and now we have to wait for them to actually be put into the immigration rules, the law essentially, to be able to advise you specifically. But it's likely to be that it will start from a certain point in time in the future, a little bit like the graduate visa. So unfortunately, I don't think you arriving in the UK before a certain date is likely to impact it, but we will wait and see. We've got another question for innovator visa, so that'd be the innovator founder visa. The business has to be started already and been generating a certain cash flow, or just the business model is enough? So it's a good question. As we said, it needs to be a new business, so it shouldn't have been a business that you've already started. And it doesn't need to have been generating a cash flow. One of the other things to really remember, of course, if you're here on a student visa, you cannot start your own business. You'd be breaching the conditions of your visa to do that. So really important that you haven't started a business while you're here, please. But yes, innovator founder needs to be a new idea. Now, there's nothing stopping you on a student visa starting to have those ideas. So if, opening a business in the UK is what you plan to do, that's absolutely fine. Do your research, start writing out your business plans. What you mustn't do is actually start trading, because once you start trading, you'll have breached the conditions of your visa, and it'll probably be very easy as well for the Home Office to find that you've breached the conditions of your visa, and that would almost certainly end your time in the UK. How does travel apply to the rest of us who are completing our course on time? Can we travel before applying for the graduate visa? Great question, Anna. The answer is yes. Your student visa is a multi-entry visa, so you can use it to come in and out of the UK as many times as you need to, up until it expires. The main thing to remember, obviously, if you're planning to apply for the graduate visa, is you do need to get back to the UK before it expires, and then be able to submit your application for the graduate visa from inside the UK before it expires. But otherwise, you're free to travel. So if you're completing your degree this summer, you may well be done with your assessments in May, and feel like you want to spend the summer elsewhere, you can come back anytime before your student visa expires and apply for the graduate visa. Question from Faheen. Hi, Tom. If I apply for the graduate visa, can I switch to the skilled visa subject to finding a sponsor? Absolutely. And I think that's almost the expectation, is that, if you're on the graduate visa and you want to progress, then probably the skilled worker visa is the next logical choice. So yes, absolutely, you can switch from the graduate visa onto the skilled worker visa from within the UK. Next question was, can a startup founder or research collaborator from a university lab act as a referee or endorser if the work demonstrates innovation or leadership potential for Global Talent Visa? I'll be honest, I don't know. That's probably one for us to take offline, for us to have a little look at what the requirements are for that one. So if you wanted to book an appointment with us, I'm happy to have a look through, and we can advise you on what might be required. Yes, you will need to get referees to use to get the endorsement for the Global Talent Visa, but I don't know specifically what the criteria of those referees are. Can a group of international students present the innovator visa business together, or is it one person? Yeah, you can do it as a group. Obviously, you'd all need to make sure that you meet the requirements, and you'd all need to be part of the business. So yes, very much, if you wanted to approach an endorsing body as a group of students, and I know it has been done before, then that's absolutely fine. What is the best route for getting the residency in the UK before 5 or 10 years? It's a difficult question, Ishad. I'm not sure there's a best route. It's which route are you going to be, able to go on. So we mentioned a few of the common ones. You've got employment routes. So if you are working in the UK for a certain period of time, you can claim settlement. You've got, I guess, what are more broadly speaking called private life or family routes. So, you know, if you're married or in a relationship with somebody who's already got settled status, or you otherwise become their dependent, you've got that. And then you've got some of those fast routes, those fast track routes. So things like the Global Talent Visa and the Innovator Founder Visa. Great because they can lead to you getting settled status quite quickly. Sorry, there's a bit of noise outside the door. Hopefully it's not too distracting. Question then from Fahim: can I travel abroad after applying for the graduate visa? So the main thing to remember, if you're applying for any visa in the UK, whether that's a graduate visa, skilled worker visa, an extension to your student visa, once you've submitted your application here in the UK, you need to stay in the UK until you get a decision. If you leave the UK, then you will invalidate your application. So it's worth having a think, especially around the end of your studies, if you've got plans to maybe go back home. Think about what we've said in terms of when you're going to be able to make your graduate visa application, and the timings. As I said, most of you will be free to travel after your course is finished and then come back on your graduate visa. It's only the people who are finishing their course a bit earlier who need to be a bit careful. But once you've made that application for the graduate visa or any other visa, stay in the UK until that visa is granted. Otherwise, you run the risk of invalidating it. I heard that if you apply for a graduate visa and then decide to pursue a master's later, which requires a student visa, they might not let you obtain it. That's not true. The difficulty you have if you do that, well, there's a few. As we mentioned, the graduate visa doesn't allow you to study in the UK. So if you are, finishing an undergraduate degree and then you apply for the graduate visa, and then a couple of weeks later you think, I'm going to do a master's degree, we're going to have to apply for a student visa, which is, at the very least, quite a significant waste of money, because as I'm sure you're all aware, UK visas don't come cheap. But also what you have done is, as we said, the graduate visa is a one-time offer. So you will have used your graduate visa, but not really used it. You will probably have, need to switch straight back onto a student visa. So it is worth, pausing to consider, are you going to go on to a different course? Alexander, if you're an undergraduate, my guess is that your student visa will finish in October. So we've spoken about you being an early finisher, so it will be sort of October time if you finish early. So there's no immediate hurry for you to make that decision. You could decide if you wanted to stay on the student route visa or extend onto the student route visa and do a master's course. But if you're then doing a year or two on the graduate visa and you later decide you want to go back into masters, not a problem. You can switch onto the student visa. Definitely no problems with that. How much weight do academic projects or published research papers carry to industry achievement when applying? I think this is, again, related to the global talent. I think that would be one for us to discuss offline. Thanks for the presentation. Could you please elaborate on the global talent visa, especially on the arts and culture field? Yeah, again, I think probably one to talk about it. It's a very broad visa. We mentioned that there are those sort of 5 fields really that come to consideration for fields that you could be considered a world leader or future world leader on. That means that there are different endorsing bodies for each of those fields and slightly different requirements for all of them. So I won't go through them all in detail now, but if you do want to get in contact with us and ask if you'd like to, I'm aware that we have Royal Holloway students who have progressed onto it. So when I say the bar is high, it is, but it's not impossibly high. Students do go on there. So very happy to talk to you offline about those ones. I think we've come to the end of the question. Has anyone else got anything? Please do put it in the chat, or if you want to put your hand up and unmute, then I'm happy with that as well. Now we've got a question from Hannah. So it seems common for Royal Holloway international students who apply for visas to stay in the UK. Could you clarify what types of accommodation work best for them? Also, is there any accommodation options for students who are not currently attending classes but are applying for visas? It's a good question. There've been lots of options for accommodation. All of the visas that we have spoken about, carry what we call a right to rent. So you are welcome to, rent privately in the UK for the duration of those visas. The university doesn't currently offer accommodation to anybody who is not a student. And I don't think there are any plans to extend that in the near future. So unfortunately, once you have finished your course with us, you would not be eligible to stay in campus accommodation. At the same time, if you're not already aware, it's the Students' Union who provides majority of advice and support on finding private rentals. So they can certainly signpost you towards the places to look for living in the UK post-study as well as during study as well. Let's see if we get any more questions in. What do you reckon, Liz?
Well, there've been a lot of questions, haven't there, Tom? Oh, another one.
There we go. Just when I thought we were out. Yes. Any support we can get from the university in the process of innovative business ideas, just to know if it is viable. Not that I'm aware of, Liz, unless there's something within the careers team now. I don't think we offer it, do we?
We do have our enterprise manager may well be able to help. So if you want to drop into the careers hub in the ground floor of the Davison building and speak to any of the team, we can put you in touch with Paul Scott, who is our enterprise manager, and he runs workshops and also does one-to-one meetings with students to help you with your ideas. And yeah, he's really excellent. So I recommend you get in touch with careers.
Excellent. A very good question at the end there.
Excellent. Right, I think we've worked you hard this evening, Tom. So thank you so much for that. I will just stop the recording.